When one is never invited to speak, one learns instead to observe.
Most people watched Larys Strong and saw the same thing, a strange little man in the corner of the Red Keep, the club-footed second son nobody looked at twice, the Queen's whisperer who fed Alicent the secrets she craved and asked for unspeakable things in return. And depending on who you ask, this strange little man is a few different things. Some call him her spy master. Some call him a schemer who used other people's grief and fear as leverage. Some call him a predator with a kink the show was bold enough to put on camera. And some say he was a loyal Green who simply cut and ran the moment the cause was lost. They are all looking at the symptoms, but none of them are actually locating the disease, because most people watched Larys serve Alicent, and what was actually happening from the very first conversation was that Larys was using her. Alicent Hightower was never his queen to serve. She was his asset to acquire. And it didn't start with the foot. It started in a garden, in the 5th episode of the first season, with a few sentences about a flower. The scene most people only half remember as the awkward beginning of a creepy alliance was something much colder than that. It was the opening move of a recruitment drive. Let me take you through it from the beginning, because once you see the shape of what Larys was doing, you can't unsee it, and you'll understand exactly why at the end he left her to the dragons without a second thought. Here's what you have to know first. Larys Strong didn't have one job in King's Landing. He had two, and they are the two most frightening jobs in any court. He was Master of Whisperers, the realm's spy master, and he was Lord Confessor, the one who runs the torture cells beneath the Red Keep. So he was the man who trades secrets, and the man who extracts them. Westeros already taught us what a spy master really is through a eunuch named Varys and his little birds. Children pulled from the gutters, invisible because no one important ever bothers to look at them. Larys is cut from exactly that cloth. He built his web out of the people who empty the chamber pots, because the people who empty the chamber pots hear everything. But here's another part people misinterpret. A good spy master's real talent is never collecting secrets. Anyone with a heavy purse can buy a secret. The talent is cultivating people. You find someone who's isolated and afraid, then you offer them something they desperately need. You bind them by giving them something they can never give back. You cut away everyone else they might turn to, and then you own them. Find, approach, bind, isolate, own. Watch Larys close the net on Alicent in 5 steps. We'll start with his choice of target. By the 5th episode, Alicent has just lost her protector, as Otto has been dismissed as Hand and sent back to Old Town. Her closest friend Rhaenyra is now her rival. She's surrounded by men with their own agendas, and she has no spies of her own, no independent way to know what's true. A spy master shopping for an asset could not have imagined a better candidate if he'd designed her himself. She has enormous power and absolutely no reliable information. She is a queen who needs eyes in the dark, and Larys is those eyes. Let's take a look at his opening ploy. He's describing a flower from Braavos. He is, of course, describing her as well, the outsider who clawed her way to a throne she was never bred for. On the surface, it's a peculiar man making peculiar small talk. But what's really happening is that he is appraising the target to her face, and she doesn't hear a word of the subtext. Then he hands over the gift. He mentions, almost as an afterthought, that on the very night her father was dismissed, a certain tea was taken to Rhaenyra's room. He doesn't accuse Rhaenyra of anything. He doesn't have to. He lays the pieces down and lets Alicent assemble the betrayal herself, so that the conclusion feels like hers. Most people in the audience heard a court gossip passing along a juicy rumour. But this was the oldest move in the book, the free sample. The fragment of intelligence so devastating, so perfectly aimed, that the target instantly needs more. Then he tells her precisely who he is, and she mistakes it for modesty. That isn't a sad confession, but a spy master offering his own job description. As the years pass and the dinners continue, Larys patiently waits for the opportunity to close the net. Finally, it arrives. Cornered, exhausted, watching Rhaenyra's bastards parade through her husband's court, Alicent lets something slip over the table. She wishes her father was still hand. She's not giving an order, but she is venting to the one man who listens to her, and that man hears what he chooses to hear. An opening. Permission. Larys goes and burns his own father and brother alive. He pulls condemned men out of the black cells, cuts out their tongues so they can never speak of it, and sends them to set Harrenhal ablaze with Lord Lionel and Sir Harwin inside. His father and his brother. Gone to clear the chair for Otto's return. The horror of this scene isn't just the murder, it's that he tells her, despite having every reason not to. Kinslaying is the deepest taboo in Westeros. Any sane man who'd just committed it would bury it forever. Larys walks straight to the Queen and confesses, because a secret you keep alone is a liability, but a secret you share is a leash. Watch what he does here. He calls it service. He tells her that since it was she that made the wish, the blood is on her hands too. And then, before he leaves, he books the payment in advance. Most people heard a monster confessing a crime, but Larys was actually binding himself to Alicent. He made the Queen an accomplice to kinslaying, so if she ever tried to expose him, she'd have to expose herself first. She can't banish him. She can't even accuse him. If she speaks, she falls, and if she stays silent, she's his. She walked into that dinner as his informant and walked out his property. Then Viserys dies. In the ensuing chaos, Alicent needs Larys more than ever. So what does he do? He builds a cage around her and calls it protection. He tells her the Red Keep is riddled with spies and that one of them is her own lady-in-waiting. Then he drops the detail that should have ended the relationship on the spot. Her own father has known about this web the whole time and has been feeding off it. Larys is telling her plainly that he is dismantling the intelligence network of the Hand of the King, her father, the leader of her own faction, and offering to remove its head. Again, Larys isn't shielding Alicent from spies. He's running a clean sweep of every channel of information in the Red Keep that doesn't pass through him. Her father's network? Gone. Her own household? Purged. The White Worm's web? Marked for the fire. Most people heard a loyal advisor warning his queen about her enemies, but this was the isolation step. By the time he's finished, there is only one person left alive who can tell Alicent what's happening inside her own castle. Then, in that same conversation, he collects his payment. He stops talking mid-sentence. The information doesn't continue until she removes her stockings and bares her feet. She turns her face away and weeps, and he takes what he came for, while she stares at the wall and waits for it to be over. This is the moment the whole thing stops being subtext. Viewers file this scene under "Larys is a creep" and move on. But this is not a man seducing a queen. There's no seduction in it, no desire. She is visibly, openly repulsed, and that repulsion is the point. This is a man collecting a debt, and the reward he promised himself standing over his father's ashes, that when the time is right, he will collect. This is a handler taking payment from an asset and making sure she knows she's been bought. And here is the cruelest detail in the entire arc. That same morning, in that same episode, Alicent stood in front of her father and said the truest sentence she ever speaks. She could see and understand, with perfect clarity, what it feels like to be used by others. But she aimed the accusation at the wrong man, at her father, who at least wanted the throne for their family. She never turned her gaze on Larys. Larys was the man who was doing the exact same thing to her, more completely, more degradingly, and entirely for his own gain. So when the end arrives, it's quick and it's savage. The Greens are losing. King's Landing is about to fall, and the courtier who'd spent years making himself indispensable to her does not come to her chambers. He doesn't offer her an escape. He doesn't mobilize a single strand of that vast network to protect the queen he claimed to serve. He goes to the broken and burned Aegon, takes him, and slips out of the city to wait out the war from across the sea, leaving Alicent behind to face Rhaenyra's judgment. A lot of people saw Larys's actions and called it betrayal, but it was colder than that. You don't betray an asset, You retire one the moment they're no longer of use. Alicent never realized that she was never the prize. She was the door to Aegon. And if you need proof, watch him run it again. The same 5 moves, start to finish, on her son. He finds Aegon insecure and overlooked. He approaches as the one man who truly sees him. He binds him by whispering that his own grandfather is the thing holding him down, and then engineers Otto's dismissal as Hand entirely. The showrunner Ryan Condal said it in plain words. Larys incepted Aegon to turn against Otto. Find, approach, bind, isolate, own. He didn't have a soft spot for Alicent and a grudge against everyone else. He had a brutal technique for getting what he wanted, and Alicent was the first time we saw him apply it. So now you can't watch a Larys scene the same way again. The flower in the garden isn't small talk. The dinners aren't a friendship. The favour at Harrenhal isn't a favour. And the foot isn't a kink. It's a receipt. Every secret Larys ever handed Alicent was a thread, and from that first garden to the night he left her, we all watched him quietly reel her in. So tell me in the comments, which stage was the point of no return for Alicent? Was it the garden, where she took the bait and never even felt the hook? Was it Harrenhal, or was it the foot, the one moment she knew exactly what he was and kept going anyway? And if you want more of this, hit subscribe. Westeros is full of people running games like this one, and we're uncovering them one by one. See you next time.